Hello everyone, thanks to have coming to this talk of Fancy Quiz. We are continuing our events with Aita. Aita Ryan is from Dublin, Ireland, and lives in Kerry. She has 2 decades of experience in software development, having worked as a C++ consultant in multiple industries in Ireland, Australia, and also in UK. She is currently in her second year of a PhD in University College Cork in Ireland, and she is researching software security with a particular focus on software developers and how best to facilitate secure coding. Aita's research is funded by the Science Foundation Ireland via the Advanced program. She will talk today about understanding developer security archetype, and I'll let you the floor, Aita. Thanks to come.
Thank you very much, Kahali, and thank you for a lovely event. Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Aita Ryan. I'm a software developer and now a PhD student at University College Cork in Ireland. I'm here to talk to you about the paper I've written with Roedig and Klaas-Jan Stol on understanding software developer security archetypes. So we'll start with the definition of software security. The idea of engineering software so that it continues to function correctly under malicious attack. That's a definition from 2004 by Gary McGraw. He was concerned about the state of software security. Things haven't been going too well since. As a developer myself, the question that I was interested in when I started researching software security was, why don't developers code securely? But of course, some of them do. Developer secure coding interest varies along a spectrum. But for those who don't, they tend to have other priorities. As Oliveira et al. Explained in a 2014 paper, they tend to focus on functionality first. And when they're done, they may not have enough time to retrofit security. Developers are not security experts, and they often have no security training. In many computer science courses, software security is still not mandatory. And developers may be unfamiliar with useful tools like automated static analysis tools, and they'll only use them if they know about them and if they're motivated enough to install them. This problem was pointed out by Wurster and Urshot as long ago as 2008. Developers may have an imperfect grasp of risk. Studies have shown that some developers only begin to consider security when software they work on is breached. Palumbo et al. In 2020 discussed how developers dismissed a potential remote code execution problem because it hadn't happened yet. And finally, many developers think that security is somebody else's problem. For example, Shia et al. In 2011 listed developer excuses like security is taken care of in design, the security team looks after it, the software is mostly composed of third-party components, which are bound to be secure. Or my personal favorite is, the software is only used by technologically inept managers who would not make good hackers. Developer motivation to code securely is widely studied. In a qualitative usability study, Nyakshina et al. Primed 10 of the 20 participating students to code securely. They found that the 10 participants who were not primed made no attempt to write secure code, while primed participants did better. They had similar results in follow-up studies with freelancers and professional developers. Asal and Shassan in 2019 found that identifying with security importance is the most motivating factor for software security, followed by workplace environment and perceived negative consequences. Xiao et al. In 2014 looked at why security tools spread, finding that the largest influence is co-worker recommendations. They also found that an attack on a developer's software can raise the developer's security awareness. This factor is also mentioned by Asal and Shassan. Haney et al. Found that maturity and experience are common characteristics of developers in companies with a strong security culture. Research shows that the developer's environment can help. Lenberg et al. In 2020 emphasized the importance of company support for developers in a safety-critical context. Danilova et al. Considered how a company's emphasis on security influences or dictates its developers' security activities. And Morales et al. Looked at how the cohesiveness of the development team is vital for security. The Nyakshina study series on priming means that organizations and teams can raise developers' security motivation simply by asking them explicitly to code securely. and allocating enough time for secure coding is also essential. The organization can provide mandatory security tools. Xiao et al. Found that when told to use security tools, developers do in fact use them. And similarly, organizations and open source teams can mandate secure practices such as security tests. Organizations and teams can provide secure coding infrastructure as well. Much of the industry is now shifting towards DevOps. When properly implemented, DevSecOps should provide a huge boost to the security of each individual developer's code. Like developer motivation, the attention paid to security by organizations and open source teams can also be seen as varying along a spectrum. Critical systems are usually subject to regulation when it comes to cybersecurity, and the regulation extends to the software development process. Haney et al. In 2018 conducted an interview study with individuals representing companies who use cryptography in their products. And they found that these security mature organizations had a security mindset with a strong security culture and deep security expertise. Outside of critical systems, Assal and Chasson in 2018 found that companies vary widely in their attention to security along the software development lifecycle. Some organizations just ignore the software security altogether, saying that security is not a priority right now. It seemed clear from research that personal characteristics and environmental support are the really key influences on how secure a developer's code is. And confirmation of this can be found in an Assal and Chasson interview study of developer security motivation from 2019. Assal and Chasson ran factor analysis on their questionnaire results and found that company-wide engagement and personal strategies were the two main factors influencing participants' software security strategies. Others have also identified these primary influences. For example, Peichel et al. In 2017 talked about how team structure, culture, and policies, and developer skill and experience are key demographic factors to be considered when designing developer studies. So we took these two factors and we put them on X and Y axes. And what emerged was the 4 software developer security archetypes, which we are presenting to you here. Most developers will move between archetypes over the course of their career. These archetypes are useful when thinking through issues of secure software development. So we'll describe them now. We adapted the term pragmatists to describe developers who work in an organization that prioritizes and supports secure development, but they are not interested in security themselves. Generally, they'll comply with the secure development ethos, but not always, and they may attempt to bypass inconvenient secure coding guidelines. Ashenden and Lawrence, in a 2016 study, described how security practitioners were told by a developer, "You're like a rock in a stream, we just flow around you." And Thomas et al. Also found occasional conflict, with one developer laughing about security culture propaganda. So it's important to remember that pragmatists are not committed to security and they won't put security first. The term champion is widely used in both industry and academia to describe a developer who's interested in security. We thought it was an excellent name for our archetype in the top right, who works in a security-aware environment and is committed to security themselves. The BSIM and other software security methods, such as OWASP SAM, recommend harnessing the champion's interest in security to help with solving security issues and to spread security knowledge within the champion's team. Haney et al., in an interview study of experienced developers working in organizations that develop cryptographic products, encountered a population of developers, many of whom were champions. The researchers described individuals who were highly committed to security and communicated strong security values to the rest of the organization. Optimists are my favorite. They're developers whose organizations or teams ignore software security, and they themselves are not interested and maybe know nothing about it, so they ignore it too. Assal and Chasson, in a 2018 paper, suggested that insecure behavior by developers may be caused by the optimistic bias, which is the feeling that misfortune will not strike me. We thought optimists was a wonderful name for this bottom left cohort of blithely optimistic developers. They're optimists because they believe their code is probably fine, or someone else is taking care of security, or their software is too insignificant to be attacked, or there's nothing worth stealing in the system, or they'll be gone by the time there's a breach. Optimists abound in secure development literature. While investigating the propagation of insecure code snippets from Stack Overflow, Bai et al. Interviewed 15 software developers about insecurities they'd found in the developers' GitHub projects. After the interview, only 2 of the developers fixed their projects. Of the remaining 13, 1 deleted their project, 1 deleted their entire GitHub account, and the remaining developers ignored the vulnerabilities. Embedded researchers, security researchers Palumbo et al. In 2020 were surprised by developers' reaction to a serious security flaw that potentially enabled remote code execution. Their fellow developers downplayed the issue, deciding not to fix it to avoid causing problems elsewhere in the software. Their organization did not appear to assign any time or resources to security or to prioritize security in any practical way, making them typical optimists. The trouble is that the customers of these optimistic developers are totally dependent on the security features in the tools the developers use for any security that will be present in the final application. And finally, our final archetype is heroes, who also work in organizations that ignore security, but are highly motivated, battling alone to secure the codebase. Assal and Chasson, in that same 2018 study, described a developer saying that they might write a security test if I want to be the hero of the day. Hero seems like the perfect name for this cohort of developers who are on their own, but still strive to secure the code in the face of indifference or even active disapproval. If working in a collaborative environment, as opposed to on their own, heroes may provide the only security checks within a company or team. Our hero archetype also encompasses solo developers, such as app developers, who take the time to familiarize themselves with the security requirements for the environments they're coding in. Xiao et al. In 2014 found that a developer who is highly motivated to code securely is more likely to research, discover, and implement security techniques and tools, even when not supported to do so in their environment. Heroes may find themselves almost in conflict with their employers when they're trying to improve the security of the codebase. Palumbo et al. Experienced this dynamic also when embedded with the unsupported development team we mentioned earlier. Their suggested security fixes were rejected until they carefully calibrated them to the codebase to ensure minimal impact on the time and attention of the development team. Thinking about developers in terms of these archetypes leads to some interesting research questions, some of which are already under investigation. We might ask, how can developer secure coding motivation be improved? This current question is currently being investigated by teams such as the Motivating Jenny project and Weir et al., who have identified useful interventions. Are there circumstances that can cause developers to lose interest in secure development? And how can these be avoided? Some researchers have identified software security blockers, which it would be interesting to examine more closely. Another interesting question is what motivates organizations and teams to code securely? Possible answers are legislation, which is what people always say to me, an effective push from a security hero, compliance requirements, the desire to get a good security reputation, and so on. Research on this would be interesting, and it's certainly an evolving question at the moment with an executive order from US President Biden in the topic only last week. And there's the corresponding question of whether organizations or teams can lose security motivation or interest. Factors such as mergers, takeovers, personnel churn, and downsizing could have an impact here. And another potential factor is, of course, security becoming a checkbox exercise with no creativity or evolution applied. As we've seen, optimists have no interest in security and no support from their environment to code securely. And this means that their customers are completely dependent on the security features of the developer's tools for any security features in the resulting software. So how can industry ensure that optimist code is as secure as possible? Developer-centered security, which centers usability and the developer in code security, can help here. Researchers are looking at the following issues and more. Badly designed APIs break the developer's mental model or can use the wrong level of abstraction. Green and Smith in 2016 provided 10 guidelines, such as safe defaults, for developing usable crypto APIs. More recent studies by Akar et al. And others suggest that these are still not widely used. Progress in this direction would be useful. Similarly, improvements like incorporating security into the operating system or frameworks, and higher level abstractions and components would support optimists. For example, some frameworks come with a default authentication component that uses up-to-date password hashing techniques. Inadequate documentation is another very serious issue. Akar et al. In 2016 identified that official documentation for an API can lack vital content, such as useful code snippets. And as a developer, we all know that when official documentation is inadequate, we go straight to Google and usually end up in Stack Overflow or a similar site. Lopez et al. In 2018, in a couple of qualitative Stack Overflow studies, found that non-specialist developers can have their security perceptions influenced by Stack Overflow, which can be good because you can learn a lot about security there. But it's not always good. Numerous studies have found that some Stack Overflow advice includes insecure code snippets. And there are various studies showing these propagating throughout the internet. There are suggestions from researchers for improving online help, and some suggestions include modifying Stack Overflow itself. Weir et al. Have done a series of studies starting in 2018 on introducing light touch security interventions into organizations and teams. These interventions are designed to get the most bang for the buck, good security improvements for low disruption. They are particularly useful in environments where security is not already prioritized, and there's no chance of seeing a comprehensive, detailed software security program. In general, if we can make security concerns mainstream, then the optimist is more likely to stumble upon them, and the security of all our software and devices should improve. Recent events in ransomware and other areas have accelerated the likelihood of software security becoming mainstream. Biden's executive order last week has useful content relating to software security, which has been welcomed by the software security industry. Critical systems are in general developed in industries that are highly regulated. So when looking at the archetypes in a critical systems context, we focus on pragmatists and champions. It's to be hoped that we are not dealing with optimists and heroes who have absolutely no backup for coding securely. Champions will reliably code as securely as they can, but what are the characteristics of critical systems that might impact on pragmatists? Axelrod noted in 2014 that there was no consistent approach for certifying software assurance tools, testing, and methodologies, and my research indicates that that position hasn't changed. The regulations for individual industries are often based on NIST guidelines. For example, the nuclear industry's US Nuclear Regulatory Commission Regulatory Guide 5.71 on cybersecurity programs for nuclear facilities used NIST 853 version 3 to provide a comprehensive cybersecurity approach. And as a developer, I'm already yawning when I read all that out. Weighing in at a hefty 465 pages, which doesn't count 25 pages of introductory material, version 5 of the NIST guidelines provides descriptions of numerous cybersecurity controls and includes a section on developer testing and evaluation. This software development section is 4 pages long. It outlines 9 activities that will be familiar to most software security advocates from sources such as SAM or the BSIM. And a look at Nuclear Guide 5.71 itself suggests that compliance is onerous with considerable detail on roles and responsibilities. This is likely to alienate the pragmatists. How do we engage the pragmatists? What are the issues? Well, there's a danger of their skipping vital security steps if they conflict with their personal priorities, which are usually to get the functionality done and stay out of trouble. Ashenden and Lawrence, in their 2016 study, pointed out that security staff can be seen as shooting the baby when they criticize a developer's code for security reasons. Thomas et al. In 2018 referred to this as calling someone's baby ugly. I searched the internet to get the cutest baby I could find so that you would understand how we developers take these things to heart. Ashenden and Lawrence also described how developers can see a poorly implemented security process as a paperwork procedural activity. So the question then becomes, how do you move past a situation where the developer sees security activities as merely ticking checkboxes? Haney et al. Talks about explaining the rationale behind security steps to developers so that they're not blindly following a script and they can take the requests on board. The Motivating Jenny project seeks to find ways to engage and motivate developers to code securely. It uses several different media and ethnographic studies to examine how developers discuss and engage with security. Motivating Jenny researchers have devised a workshop format to help developers to grapple with security topics. Their work focuses on leveraging developers' values and professional pride to interest them in secure coding. And of course, part of this is also if secure coding becomes mainstream, because then it becomes embarrassing if you're not doing it, and that would definitely have an impact on developers. Providing excellent tools is always good. Sadowski et al. In 2018 described the painstaking building of a static analysis tool for use at Google. They had a golden rule that there should be no false positives. That means things that say that there's a bug when there isn't, that break the build. This type of initiative helps to keep the pragmatists on side. And even if you're not particularly, even if you're working in any industry, I would recommend reading that paper because it's a very good example of how to do these things with low impact on the people you're dealing with. Oh, I put this in because I was looking for a cute animal and this was so cute, I put it in on a big screen. I figured it looks like a baby software developer with loads of enthusiasm and innocence who hasn't any idea what's ahead of them. Anyway, thank you very much for coming to my talk. I find those 4 software developer security archetypes very helpful when thinking through issues of software security, and I hope you find the same. Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Thanks for the nice presentation, Nita. And I don't see questions in my chat. Sorry for being a little bit late, but the previous session was a little bit not on time. Well, okay. I mean, thank you for the presentation and for the paper that is related to one of my pet topics, that is behavioral software engineering.
Oh, and, really?
Yes. And well, I have several questions that are coming in my mind like a big brainstorm. The first is, how do you think DevSecOps or SecDevOps, or however do you want to call it, will impact in that? Because, I mean, if you finally have a tool chain that is somehow established, and you can do some more, let's say, continuous software engineering, using the term by Brian, how do you think this will impact this kind of archetypes that you have?
Well, I think that, of course, DevSecOps is a kind of a mixed bag because it can be badly implemented, which I can talk more about if you like. But I think that really the person who I think is really going to benefit from DevSecOps is the hero, because that's the person who's got no environmental support to code securely. So they're trying to smuggle security into the code base. And I've been that person, and it's not easy. And if you have a DevSecOps pipeline, you can smuggle it in more easily because it takes up less time, right? So typically what you do, what heroes do, is that they spend a lot of time on, I see a question coming in about how we help the heroes. We spend a lot of time trying to make changes that will impact positively on the code base. And of course, we can say, we're doing this for security and we'll get a certain amount of time for that. But generally speaking, you can't go off for months and do it. So you're doing half an hour here, half an hour there. You're trying to set up pipelines, trying to make sure, even before DevSecOps it sort of was a thing, I was doing this, trying to make sure that everything's routine, that tests are run automatically, that they're run every night on the server, that sort of stuff. So when you get something like DevSecOps, where you've got a whole body of expertise that you can tap into and bring into your organization and run, relatively transparently to other developers, and you could sell it because everybody's doing DevOps. So even if people aren't interested in DevSecOps, they'll say, oh, yes, we should be doing DevOps, everyone's doing that. And then you can smuggle in the sec part, right? So I just think it's going to be great for those people.
Maybe this is connected to one of the questions that we have here in the chat by Lucy Hunt.
Hi, Lucy. Hi, Lucy. I've seen your papers. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so it's, I love the archetypes too. How do you think we can help the heroes?
Yeah, so that's DevSecOps, I think, is a huge thing that I would not have been able to talk about a few years ago. That will definitely help the heroes. In general, I think as an industry, the way we help the optimists and the heroes is that we try to mainstream software security more than it's done already. And I know Lucy is a big fan of that idea anyway, because she works on it herself. I'm not sure how easy that is to do, but I notice a lot of optimism in people in Twitter and stuff from the recent ransomware and so on has really impacted on this. And Biden's executive order, which I mentioned in my talk, talks a lot about software security and about finding standards for determining software security. And so I think all of those things will definitely help the heroes. And in fact, maybe we'll be here in 10 years and there'll be no optimists and heroes because it'll be illegal not to have software security in your software, which I'm starting to think might be, one of the better options going forward.
Yeah, but I'm also interested in the pragmatists, because I mean they have things, but they are not too aware. And finally, I mean, I think I got a paper written a couple of years ago about DevSecOps and culture, right? Because finally, DevOps is about culture also. So it's about the tool chain, but if you simply implement the tool chain, maybe it will work and maybe not. So you need to do some kind of culture. To what extent do you think culture can help others, maybe pragmatists?
Yes, I think culture can be a huge help. But, there was a quote in my paper about a pragmatist who was saying, oh, God, they're always banging on about a bloody security culture here. It's a waste of time. And we're always laughing at them, right? And I know as a software developer myself, there can be times when you're behind the tool shed giggling about whatever the latest management initiative might be. So I think it has to be kind of a holistic thing where there's people in management who really care about security. This is a huge factor. If you don't have people in management who care about security, you can forget it. Like, you can smuggle stuff in as a developer, but you're never going to have properly secure software. But you arguably never can anyway. But so I think you need someone in management to push it, and you need enthusiastic, interested developers. And that's one of the reasons why I feel that this whole kind of other area of mergers and acquisitions, and a lot of companies being pushed in together, and they all have different strategies, and they're all doing things different ways, and then you've got security departments trying to merge them all together. I think that's really negative for software security. I don't know what the answer to that is. Downsizing. I read about a company that fired all the developers that had developed their core product, and which was 10 or 15 years old, and outsourced the maintenance of that to South Korea or somewhere, or I don't know where actually. It could be China, could be anywhere, could be Ireland. But the point is, they fired the guys who wrote the original code, and so now you can imagine that every other software developer in that company has lost a lot of interest and enthusiasm when it comes to things like security or anything else. And particularly with security, because it's a non-functional requirement, it's easier to get away with not doing it. If the software doesn't work or if it's too slow, everyone will notice, right? But if it's not secure, unless you have really good procedures and tests in place, nobody might ever notice until you've got a breach.
Yeah, I was also thinking that, maybe you know her, but Sarah Beckham, she has very, very good works devoted to motivation of software workers, and more specifically together with Joseph and all, to people working in GSD, in global software development, right? And maybe this is something. Look her up. Yeah. But I think this is something also to take into account. And the last thing that I want to mention, it was also a work by me and with people from Lero. That was my friend who passed away, Rory O'Connor, and Paul and Murat from DCU. We got a paper, I think we published 4 years ago, on the big 5 personality traits and the impact on software teams. Right?
Oh, I'll have to read that. That sounds like it might be relevant to my paper. Yeah. Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah, well, I can, if you later send me an email, because I don't want to run out of time, I will send you for sure. But I think it was published in IST, in Information and Software Technology, I think 2018. But I will send you.
And it's more software development focused rather than security focused.
Yes.
That's how I missed it. Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that there, because it would have really been a great thing to have.
Yes, but maybe this is something that needs to be done in the future. That it should not be only software development, but also, let's say, a more general software development plus security. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's brilliant, Ricardo. Thank you for that.
Well, then I need to close your talk, because I don't want to run out of time and miss the next session.
Oh, yes,
Thank you.
Of course.
My regards to the Rebel City, and see you very soon. Send me an email.
Okay, thanks a million, Ricardo. Bye-bye.
Bye.